So hello and welcome to another Valorant map analysis video. Today we tackle the last map in terms of attacking. We of course will do a series on defending as well. Not sure if I'll do it straight after this, but we will get to it at some point. And this is Split, and this is the meta comp on Split. Or is it? Because Split was, funnily enough, perhaps the most split map in terms of deciding the comp for any team. There was a lot of differences. Only really Astra was the only agent with an above 80% pick rate, which I'm not sure if that happened for any other map where only one agent got that. And the rest, were in sort of the... I think Raze was the only one above 60 after that, and everyone else was either, from like 60 below in terms of pick rate on Split. So it was very split in terms of what is actually meta on this map. But similar to Bind, I think that this agent comp, when you look at it, it's pretty aggressive, right? Double duelist, double controller and an initiator. This is actually what Crew, the Argentinian team, ran on this map, this exact comp, and it worked out pretty well for them, the double duelist. And I think similar to Bind, where we also don't see any Sentinel, it doesn't surprise me that much because I think both Bind and Split are pretty heavily defensive-sided maps the way that they are designed, and so it makes sense to run, a more aggressive comp to try and, counterbalance that in a way. But with that said, let's move on to the map and talk about the different ways that we can go as attackers. Obviously, we can go towards B, we can come towards mid, or we can go towards A. Very simple on this map, and the different choke points, of course, will be B main across here. Obviously, Heaven as well. You might want to put it here, but either way, it's still Heaven. Vents, of course. Then we have this Heaven here, and of course A main. Again, you could in theory put a choke point here. It's kind of a sort of a mini checkpoint choke point, which isn't easy to say, but yes, those are the 5 choke points. And so we have a ratio of sort of 3 to 5, and this is perhaps something that I didn't fully explain as well as perhaps I would have liked to in those earlier videos, but I think it's a good time to still do this now anyway, because there's 3 ways for attackers to go that then lead to 5 choke points. And on different maps, of course, we have seen a variety. Ascent is 3 to 4, Bind is 4 to 4. Breeze, you could argue, is like 5 to 6. Icebox is kind of 5 to 5. Icebox is a weird one though. But on those maps with the higher numbers, often it's easier to attack, because what often will mean is if there's 5 ways for you to go as the attackers, there's 5 choke points that defenders have to hold. That normally means if you get 1 kill, that means that the map will be pretty open to you, because there'll always be somewhere where there then is no defender. So all you really need is that first kill. On maps like Breeze, on maps like Haven, maybe Icebox as well, as soon as you get that first kill, you should be winning most rounds. Whereas on maps like Bind and Ascent, you can get that first kill, but there's still only 4 choke points for the defenders to defend, so they still should have everyone somewhere, and, it might not mean that you are converting as many of those rounds as you are in other rounds. Of course, you're still a man up, so you still probably will be winning most rounds if you get the first kill, but it won't be as, imposing for the defenders as it is on a map like Breeze, for instance. And here on Split, we have a 3 to 5. Now, 3 is a very low number. In fact, it's pretty much the lowest number you'll probably ever see in any map that is ever on this game to start off with 3 ways to go. And 5, obviously, is a nice number for the attackers, because, again, if we can get up to 5, that means that as soon as we get 1 kill, that, we should hopefully be starting to convert rounds. And this is what I think is important, is to get from 3 to 5. How do we do this? Because we only have 3 initial ways to go, but we have 5 choke points for the defenders to defend. So how do we get from 3 to 5? And the answer is pretty simple. It is to take control of these 2 areas. If we can take control of this, and male is, you don't necessarily have to have control of it, but if you can take control of mid here, if you can get this bit of area, and if you can get really this ramp area up here and control of just like this section of A main as well, if you can get these areas of control, this and this, then that's when you've got to 5. That is when you have all the choke points available to you. You can go to any one of them, right? Because if you just get stuck in the back of mid and never manage to push up here, well, then you're never really going to put enough pressure on these 2 choke points. The defenders are going to feel pretty safe that, a mid rush isn't coming. There's no split chance, really. And the same is true here. If you can't take control of this area here, well, then you can't get to this choke point. This choke point is completely cut off to you. And so you have to take control of those 2 areas if you want to get to all of the choke points on the map. And as I mentioned, that's very important on this map, because as soon as you've done that, then you just need 1 kill. as soon as you've done that and you get one kill, well, then the round hopefully should be yours. Because now, again, once you've got that bit of control of the map and you get that kill, now there isn't enough defenders to defend all of the different choke points. And that's going to cause a lot of problems for the defenders, because now all of a sudden a choke point will always be free and they'll be scampering to figure out which one they're going to leave free as well. And you can catch people off in rotations. This is when attackers start to win. And so these two areas of the map, taking this A main control here and taking this mid control here, is super duper important. Now the mid one in particular is really important. I should make this clear. The A main one, sometimes you can go without this. You know, you can just do a B split push and something like that, and you can have successful rounds. So the A main one is like, you know, an ideal, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen. But this mid, someone must always be in mid. On split, in my opinion. Just every attacking round, you should just always have someone in mid. If you don't, you're probably throwing, because there is 2 choke points here for you to attack, and they're pretty important ones as well, because if you want to do any kind of split push, you probably will want someone in here, especially going to B, of course. I mean, you literally can't do a B split push without going up mid somewhat. Going through vents is less important. I'll talk about that in a bit. But definitely going to B, you have to have someone in mid. But you should just have someone in mid anyway, because it's going to give you access to 2 of your 5 choke points. And, you know, that's going to put pressure on the defenders. Okay, so now let's look at the various choke points and how easy they are to attack. Well, going on to B here through B main. This choke point, I've always found it a bit awkward to try and push through, you know, just solely force your way into sight. It is okay. Sometimes we see like this sage wall across here, which I'm not a great fan of either. It always feels a bit clunky attacking the B site, in my opinion. It's not the hardest site to take in the entire game. It's not impossible by any means, but I think you will have a lot more success if there is pressure from both sides. Because often what will happen, if you only have pressure from B main, then, you know, you're just going to end up with, you know, the defenders in heaven also, you know, gunning you down. And so I think you should always wait for, you know, the defenders in heaven. You should wait until your, you know, allies here have got towards heaven and are putting pressure on the defenders in heaven, so that they can't just turn around and kill you, and so that whoever is defending B is isolated. That's really what you have to do on B. And once that is the case, you know, taking B isn't too difficult. But if you don't have that pressure in heaven, then I think you will find it pretty difficult, because you'll just be getting gunned down from multiple angles. Okay, next up we come to mid. And when we come to mid, of course, this first area, you know, might be contested. You know, the defenders will often, you know, maybe play someone here. They'll maybe peek out here. They might put a sage wall across mid as well. It will be somewhat contested, and you have to know that, and you have to understand that. But when you do understand that, and you know, use some of your utility to take control of this area, which normally isn't too difficult to get up to there, you know, it'll be this push around the corner that becomes quite difficult. Now, some teams might not have anyone in vents, and I'll talk about why that is perfectly fine. But, you know, they definitely will have someone in heaven, I can guarantee you that. And so, you know, this will be an interesting place to come up. Now, obviously, you have to check mail, but that won't be too big of an issue. This is just sort of a peek to make sure that you are, you know, focusing on the game and making sure you're not making any mistakes. So this shouldn't be too difficult if they are in mail. You know, you just always need to check it. It's as simple as that. But then pushing through this choke point, I mean, again, because of the way you can sort of wrap around here, you can sort of start close to this wall and no one from over here can see you yet. So you can check this corner pretty easily, and then as you fade out, of course, then there's only going to be a couple angles where they might be somewhere on here and ready to drop down if you fight them there. But again, that will come into your eye line very quickly. And again, you can kind of check it as you go through. And then, you know, they could be playing somewhere near the box or somewhere back here. But again, that's perfectly fine, because, you know, you're going to basically come round. You'll check this angle first, you'll see this second, and then you'll see anyone here third. And you can kind of go, it's what I talked about on Haven on A, where you can just sort of go boom, 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 check, check, check. And, you know, go through your progressions, as it were, without having, you know, fights from multiple angles. You won't have to worry about other people, but there might be 2 in heaven, which can cause some issues. But again, that's why you want to use utility, because if you can get heaven control, you'll probably be doing pretty well, because whoever's on B site is probably pretty screwed at that point. Now we come into vents, and as I say, some teams might not even put anyone in vents, to be honest, and not a lot of teams tend to go vents, and I'll explain why that is right now. Because if we put this choke point here, and I talked about this on Haven with Garage as well, and why pushing Garage, like doing a C split on Haven, it's fine, but it's not that effective. And the reason is, it's the same reason here in vents, is that this entrance point here is very shallow. you know, there's no threat to a defender. A defender can play here and they can, you know, watch this, and they aren't under any threat if you come through vents as well. You know, they'll still be looking the same way. It's all the same to the defender. And so just, you know, it's not that fruitful to even do that. Now, it can be somewhat, you know, panic inducing for a defender if you know, for instance, if you catch a defender like up here and you are here, then obviously the defender's in trouble. But a lot of the time the defender at that point that you've already taken vents will be long gone and back here and in a safe position, you know, where coming up vents won't actually be that fruitful for you. And so, you know, going vents in general I mean, it's okay if you kind of faked B and then you're going A. That's probably what you'll mainly use vents for, is a quick way to get to A site after you've faked some pressure on B. That's what most pro teams use it for. I don't think that actually pushing vents will be that fruitful because, as I mentioned, the sort of entrance point is just too shallow to really make a difference. Then coming on A, as I mentioned, you know, this is a really important part of the map that you need to try and take some control of, and defenders will normally contest it somewhat. Maybe not always, but they definitely will sometimes put, you know, some utility here, make sure that you can't just, you know, run straight in. So you need to be using your utility to probably get this bit of control. But once you've got this bit of control, then turning around this corner can be a bit difficult, because especially at low ranks, because of course there is kind of like this step here that means that the defenders can play kind of a headshot only angle back here, which can be difficult. Obviously, the higher you go up, that becomes less and less of a problem as you become better at shooting. But coming around this corner can be a bit tricky. You always, again, have to just make sure that you're not being cheesed on and no one's in that corner. Again, shouldn't be too hard for you, though, because you can't really be peeked from any of the angles. So you should be good to check that angle there. I have died quite a few times not checking this angle myself. So I say this with great caution that you definitely should check this angle. But then because, you know, this is a longer gunfight, if the defender is back here and you've just turned this corner, you often sometimes will be able to live. And once you've lived past this initial gunfight and, you know, the defender has to retreat to reload or you know, whatever, they just retreat, you know, then you can start pushing in here. And actually, it's not that difficult, I find, particularly if you have, you know, some utility up as well. It's not that difficult to actually, you know, get towards here. And if you can step on this box, I often find that's a very good thing to do to catch any defenders trying to rotate and help in. It's just a kind of a weird angle for the defenders to have to check. You're, you know, on a box, you're elevated, and you have cover as well. So it's just a nice place to play. And I actually don't think once this initial defender has retreated away from this gunfight, you can actually get in here pretty easily, and you can take this bit of space pretty easily most of the time, I think, and get onto this box. And then hopefully, you know, you can pen the defenders back into the back of heaven as well. And then pushing through a main, this one isn't actually too bad. As far as sights go, it's not the worst push in the world. And again, the reason is you can kind of train yourself to, you know, hug this tight right wall so that you can check anything left. The only problem you might have is the vertical element of obviously the ledge and the lower hell part as well. That is probably the main issue with this, is that, you know, you do have to check for vertical angles. But once you've got to here, you know, you can check this without being really seen by anything. Obviously, they could be back here, but I'm assuming you're going to smoke that because, you know, that's where you put a smoke most of the time. And so, you know, they could just be back here, like ready to dart into elbow. That's something that they could do, but it's nothing too bad. So you can only push through this choke point, I would say. It's not too bad but then you have to be very vigilant on this site. This site kind of never ends for where defenders could be. So, you know, you shouldn't get overconfident once you've made this initial sort of run in, because there might be no one up here. There might be no one there, because they can play in a lot of different places actually on site. Obviously, this box is a very important one. And if you're defending, by the way, you should always at least once play this box, because you'll just get free kills. Obviously, they could be anywhere around elbow, back of sight. They could be behind this. There's just a lot to check once you actually get to sight as well. So always be vigilant. Don't think that this initial push means that you've got the site, because it really doesn't. Getting past this choke point really is just sort of one checkpoint in terms of taking a site, because there's a lot of different places that defenders could be, and you need to be vigilant of that. So now let's assume we have taken the site. Let's say we've taken B site. As I say, you'll hopefully have some amount of heaven, at least pressure, but maybe even control if it's gone well. And you know, the default plant is normally here. It's a fine default plant. There isn't too many great places to sort of see it from. If you do have space and the time, and you have, let's say you have heaven control, then I think that this will just be a much better plant spot for you. It has the same sort, you know, if you're playing back here, it's basically the same. But obviously this can be seen here from, these angles back in B main, and that will be pretty important for you and should get you quite a few wins. Obviously then you can also maybe wrap around. It can be seen from heaven as well. So if you do have the space and time, and again, just another good reason for why taking heaven on B site is pretty good in general, is it will allow you to do this plant, and this plant here will, be pretty unlosable, I would even say, because you can just see it from so many good angles and good places to be that the defenders shouldn't really be able to ever get the defuse off unless you lose a lot of gunfights. And then when we're taking on A site, a plant that a lot of people do, and it drives me crazy to be honest, is plant behind this box. I just hate this. Is another one where it's like the C default plant on Haven. It's like this plant is terrible in my opinion. And the reason for that is because again, you can't really see it from any angle that you'd actually want to go. That's the first thing, right? And the second thing is you can be spammed through this box. I know that you can spam diffusers through this box as well. That's very risky though. But you can be spammed through this box as well by the defenders if you don't have heaven control. They can pepper you with bullets. But there's somewhere like this place right here. Like if you want to do a safe plant, just do it there. This can't be spammed through. You will be safe. 100%. It's about the same in terms of angles that the defenders can see from, and in fact you can even do this plant, which I've seen quite a few pro teams do as well, in the back corner, and again it can't really be seen anywhere from heaven. It's unlikely the defender's going to be here if you're planting. Like if you're planting, then the defender won't be there hopefully. And so it's the same amount of safety, more safe than this box, but you can actually see it from these corners of the site. If someone is back in A main, they just have to quickly wrap around here. Whereas opposed to this box, they have to run all the way around here and down here. You can see the difference very quickly. And so, yes, I would say don't plant behind this box if you get the chance not to. The ideal plant location, though, if you if you have full heaven control and you're feeling confident with that, the best plant is, on the heaven side of this box. And the reason is obviously it can be seen from heaven very easily. So if you have heaven control, you should be able to get that kill pretty quick. But it also can be seen, obviously anywhere under hell or anywhere like that. And again, it doesn't take a long run out of A main to be able to see the spike. So that's going to help you as well. So plant here if possible. And so that basically is attacking split. What I would say the main ideas you want to do is you want to make sure that your 3 ways of going gets converted into 5 choke points. So I would say that you probably most of the time you always will want mid pressure. This is something I would always say. Just absolutely send someone mid. Don't try and 5 push a site. I would send people mid. I would probably take it a bit slower on this map overall, because if you just run in, it just isn't going to go that well for you, to be honest, because you're going to get hit from multiple angles. I don't think running in, obviously, again, I should always say this. This is not to say that you should never do it on an attacking side ever, but don't make it like a sort of plan that you go to multiple times, a lot of times. It probably isn't going to work out for you most of the time. You probably have more success if you take it a bit slower on this map and, try and take mid. Try and convert your 3 ways of going into 5 choke points. So try and take this area. This bit of control here is very important, so you will need some utility on A. I would probably, ideally, attacking on split, send 2 people mid pretty much every round, at least 1 person, but I'd probably send at least 2 people mid most rounds. See if you can take the mid space. Send 1 person towards A, even really if you're doing B, just to start off. Send 1 person towards A. See if you can take this bit of control. Just try and live, basically. Once you've got this bit of control and you're putting a bit of pressure on, because obviously if the defenders rotate, say you are going for a B split, right? Say you do have 2 players here, 2 players in mid, and you're trying to pressure B, you're trying to pressure heaven, you're trying to pressure this push, and you do have someone who's managed to walk up here, well then you don't have to push. Right, that's the difference. That if you can get access to these choke points by sending 1 person to A, and this person knows that they're rotating, they've heard them rotating across, well then that, oh well, let's just go to the other side. Send these 2 players back to mid, send these 2 players back to A, and we'll attack A instead, right? I think that would just be more fruitful for you in general, and obviously this person on A can then, cause a lot of havoc by, playing in the defender's spawn even. And that's going to win you rounds. And that is how you will probably win a lot of rounds on split attacking, is by not going for this kind of super aggressive approach. Be more measured, be more control, try and take control so that you can have access to these different choke points. Put pressure on, and then you should be able to win quite a lot of attacking rounds. And so there it is, attacking on Split as a whole. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed this series of how to attack on these different maps. As I say, at some point I will do a series on how to defend on these maps. I think that would be somewhat easier in general, because defending in this game on quite a few of the maps is a bit easier, so we won't have to go, you know, the concept shouldn't be too hard to understand. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's Split, and have a nice day, everyone.